Hey guys, Mike here. This is the Universal Theory of Defense Part 2. This one's a banger, so hope you're excited. Let's get right into it. Alright, so if you recall from Part 1, each of the weapons lies somewhere on the spectrum where it's a dodging or a blocking type of weapon. You have some weapons that can do both, dodging or blocking, and there's some weapons that can do both, but it depends on your build. And there's some weapons that can only do one or the other, no matter what. Now, the point of this was to not say, oh, this weapon is here. It's just to get you thinking as to when you use your weapon, how am I playing defense? And defense is important because it makes up more than half of the game in Monster Hunter. In fact, it actually makes up more than half of the game because the monster has the initiative on you. So the monster always gets the first attack on you. But there's one thing I left out on the spectrum, and it's something that all of these weapons have access to in some form to some degree, and that is repositioning. Now you can reposition in a couple of ways. You can just walk, that's one way to reposition. You can evade, so you can actually dodge and press the dodge button to roll in a direction, and that's a form of repositioning because you're not trying to iframe the monster attack. You're actually just trying to use the high burst of speed to get to another spot in the arena. For Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, you can use wire bugs, various wire bug skills, as well as wire dash. So for example, Lance, even though it's mainly a blocking weapon, still has access to repositioning through walking or hopping. Same thing with a purely dodging weapon like dual blades. Dual blades can iframe moves, or you can just walk to the side. It has a very high walk run speed that allow you to evade monster attacks that way. Now every weapon has this, even Greatsword. Now Greatsword's walk is going to be significantly worse than the other weapons, but it still has it nonetheless, and you shouldn't forget about it. Okay, so why is this important? This is important because it determines what is the optimal punish for every attack that the monster throws at you. So just because you're a purely blocking or guarding weapon doesn't mean you always have to guard. Likewise, if you're a purely dodging weapon, you don't always have to iframe moves. You can just reposition. Some weapons that can guard and evade and reposition, they have the most options to determine what is the optimal punish for a move that a monster throws at you. So let's just go over some of the moves that a monster can throw at you. All right, so here's let's say this is a monster attack here, something like this. This is you can think of this as a jab, monster jab. Very fast attack, usually a claw attack or a bite attack that comes out very quickly. The recovery is variable on the monster jab. Could be short or could be long. All right, so I'm gonna draw a few symbols here and let's just say what they are. So, all right, so if I draw X, that means it's a guard, If I draw a triangle, this is an iframe. If I draw a circle, this is a reposition. Reposition can be through walking, running, or by evading, using evade extender, for example. All right, so for a monster jab, you can guard it, right? Guard it. And this green line represents your punish window. So you want a long punish window, ideally. The issue with guard is sometimes you may try to guard, but you may not have enough knockback resistance. So you can up your knockback resistance by getting guards, guard level 1, guard level 3, or guard level 5. Or sometimes the monster attack just hits too hard and has heavy knockback that you're going to suffer from knockback resistance here, which is sort of a recovery period that you have to go through. And in that case, you're going to have a reduced punish window because it eats up into some of your punish time. Next thing you can do is iframe the move and you get the punish window here. But the iframe can also suffer from not being in the right position. So it's sort of like the parallel to the guard knockback where you iframe, but you iframe in a direction such that you don't have the right position to follow up and hit the part. So you have to reposition slightly, walk like a few feet to the left or right so that you can reach the part and then you can start attacking this. The other thing you can do is reposition, but because of the monster jab, they're usually quick. There really isn't a strong benefit to repositioning in order to optimize your follow-up attack. So at best, it would look something like this guard or this iframe. It would actually look something like this because you spend time repositioning, then you get your follow-up attack. But usually for a jab, it's no better than a guard or a perfect iframe. All right, let's go with the late hitbox. So it looks something like this. The monster hitbox is here. So let's start with the reposition. The reposition, you can actually reposition here just so you're outside of the hitbox of the monster's attacking part, and you can actually start hitting another part so you can get damage uptime. This is actually a good way to get damage uptime for a late hitbox. Now, what if you try to guard this? Now, if you're trying to attack the attacking monster part, you actually will not have access to the part because it's winding up and usually gets outside of your range. And when the monster part becomes an active hitbox, you literally can't attack it, or otherwise you can get knocked back. So what you're doing if you're going to guard that is you'll guard it here, and then you'll get your follow-up attack. And you see the attack window you get is not that good. An alternative that you can do, however, is you can actually do something similar to the reposition scenario, is where you actually attack the other part, guard against the active hitbox, and then start attacking that monster part. Something like that. But this is a little bit situational. This ultimately is just a sub case of the reposition. Same thing with the iframe. You can just iframe the hitbox, and you can do nothing here. It's not the end of the world. You're objectively doing worse damage than a reposition case or this case here, but again, it's not the end of the world. It's better than getting hit, and you follow up in the short recovery frame at the end. Certainly you could still iframe this, but before that, you actually try to attack whatever monster part is available to you. Sometimes you actually can't do this. You have to do this because there literally is no monster part that you can attack. And then you get a follow-up window. So this is a late hitbox situation. Now, depending on the monster parts that are available for when you reposition and you attack, it may or may not be worth it. Usually it's worth it, but the reason I say it may not be worth it is depending on the hit zone values and how much damage you're actually doing. But for 99% of all cases, if you're hitting something on the monster, that is better than not hitting the monster. And this goes to the concept of damage uptime, and this is across all video games. It's not exclusive to Monster Hunter. As long as you're hitting something, it's always better than not hitting something. It's sort of like Newton's first law. It's just an immutable truth mathematically. All right, so that's the late hitbox. All right, let's do the long hitbox now. This is a long hitbox. Okay, this is where guard is actually quite powerful, because in Monster Hunter, when you guard and take the hit with your guard, you're essentially invincible for the rest of the hitbox. And you have special cases like Anjanath, where it's a long hitbox, but he has 2 hitboxes. But for the most part, 99% of the cases, if you guard the first few frames of that active hitbox, you are safe for the rest of the attack. So this is actually a very strong case for guarding. You get all this damage in here. Now, iframing actually does not work here. You cannot iframe a long hitbox early. The damaging hitbox lasts so long that you just don't have enough iframes to void it. So if you're going to do an iframe here, what you have to do is you actually have to reposition first. You have no choice. So you're waiting, and then maybe at the tail end you can get an iframe in on the last few frames of the long hitbox, and then you can follow up in the recovery period here. Alternatively, if the long hitbox isn't so egregious with its active area, you can reposition quickly and then get a follow-up on a alternative monster part that is accessible. So you can see the long hitbox, the guard is actually the strongest option. Another note here is you notice I'm drawing a few dots always after a circle, and that's sort of the repositioning tax that you have to pay because it costs time to move from point A to point B. Like even if you do evading or dodging to move from point A to point B, there's the associated time with the actual dodge and the recovery period associated with the dodge as well. So that's sort of the movement tax that you have to pay. And this tax is present in all of the repositioning scenarios. All right, let's do the last one, which is multi-hitbox. These are usually monster combos they'll do on you. This is a multi-hitbox. Now, guard is pretty simple. You just guard the first one, then you guard the second one. But the thing is, in Monster Hunter, usually your attacks are on a 1.53 second time basis, so you actually can't really attack here. It's very rare you can get an attack between here, and it's usually not safe to do so. Maybe Lance could get away with a poke here, but on the whole, I'm just going to say you actually can't do anything, so you're just kind of waiting. And then after the monster's final attack, then you can get into your punish. Same with dual blades. If you're trying to iframe stuff, maybe dual blades could get in a cheeky hit between the monster combo, but probably not worth it. So it looks very similar to the guard scenario. And then lastly, we have reposition. If you just altogether avoid the danger areas that these multi-hits are going to land, then you get the largest attack punish window here. Again, this is still highly dependent on what move is being thrown at you, and it's highly variable. You know, it could actually look something like this instead, where you have a little bit more tax you have to pay, something like that. But I'm just gonna leave those for now. Now, I've been calling this reposition, these circle scenarios, but another way to think about repositioning and following up with a long attack window is a true counter. And these are very powerful in Monster Hunter because these do the most damage. If you can just have free reign on a monster part while it's attacking, that's a lot of damage. And it's directly proportional to the amount of time you get. I've actually experienced this before when the monster whiffs you and you already realize he's gonna whiff you and you just start attacking him while he's still attacking you. And that's a true counter. And it's effectively the same thing as the reposition defensive option. Remember, every weapon has two defensive options, either a guard and a reposition or an iframe and a reposition. Some weapons have all three, guard, iframe, and reposition as defensive options. It's up to you to figure out when a monster throws an attack at you, whether it's a jab, a late hitbox, a long hitbox, a multi-hitbox, and based on the geometry of the monster's attack, what is my defensive response going to be to maximize the amount of damage I can get in on the follow-up. And that damage is directly proportional to the amount of time you have accessible to the monster part. It could be the part that the monster is attacking with, but for true counters and repositions, it's usually a different monster part that is stationary and not an active hitbox. In those situations, that does the most damage. But it's this puzzle you're trying to figure out for every single move that a monster does, for every single monster in the game, for every weapon in the game. This is how you should approach defense in Monster Hunter. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. This is a Universal Theory of Defense Part 2. Part 3 will come out when I feel like it. Thanks for watching.